Hello everyone, I welcome you back to another important lecture. And for today, we will look on toward the specialized cells that are important with context to the sexual reproduction in the humans. And these cells, they go with the name of the gametes cells. If I were to categorize the cells of the body into two distinct categories, then on one side there would be coming up of these gametes. On the other side, we would have the somatic cells. The major difference between the gametes and the somatic cells is that all the cells of the body, other than the sperm and the egg cell, is the somatic cells, and they have got the diploid number of the chromosomes in them. And in case of the human beings, that would be 46. But when we talk about the gametes that we have with us, so the special thing about them is that they have half the number of information in them, they have half the number of chromosomes in them, or they carry half the genetic information from the parents. The gametes, in case of the humans, are two. One of them are the sperm cells that would be produced in the testes of a male parent. The other gamete that we have with us is the egg cell, and it would be produced within the ovaries of the female individual. If I have to be producing the sperm cell, or if we have to be producing the egg cell, so they both would be produced with the help of the meiosis process. Now, the idea that we have to be getting here is that why was there need for these gametes to be possessing one set of chromosomes in them, or half the number of the chromosomes in them, compared to their respective male and the female parent? What we know is that any of the offspring that would be born, it need to have 46 chromosomes in it if this has to become a human being. Now, among these 46 chromosomes, 23 chromosomes, it would come from the male parent in the sperm cell, and the other 23 chromosomes, they would come from the female parent. So this is the reason that these gametes, they need to have half the genetic information in them, or each gamete need to have one set of chromosomes in them, so that in the resulting zygote that would later convert into the embryo, it should have two set of chromosomes or diploid number of the chromosomes in them. What our idea would be that we must be in the position to be justifying that how does the structure of the sperm cell and the egg cell would look like, and how do their structures they adapt them to be performing their role. If I were to clearly tell you the role of the sperm cell, so the idea is very simple, that this sperm cell would carry the genetic information from the male parent. If I were to talk about that how many parts this sperm cell would have in it, so broadly, the sperm cell has got three parts in it. The first part that we have with us is the head of the sperm. The second part is the midpiece, or we also call this as the body of the sperm cell. And the third part of the sperm cell would be its tail, or we also call this as the flagellum. If I were to take you separately to the parts of the sperm cell, so if you were to look here, here what we have got, this is the head of the sperm cell. And this head of the sperm cell has further got two distinct areas in it. At this point, what we have is the haploid nucleus. The other part that we have in the head is the acrosome with us. Now, if I were to talk about the role of the haploid nucleus, so this would have the genetic information that is coming from the male parent. If we were to talk about this region, which is the acrosome with us, so this acrosome has got some special enzymes, and these enzymes they are the hydrolytic enzymes. The slight issue is that the egg cell with what the sperm cell has to fuse. So it has got a protective covering on the outside of it. And this protective covering is the jelly coat. If the jelly coat is not digested, then ultimately the nucleus of the sperm cell, it cannot fuse with the nucleus of the egg cell. So for the fusion of the sperm with the egg cell, this is important that this jelly coat must be digested. So for this purpose, the acrosome that we have here, so this would release the hydrolytic enzymes out of it. And once the hydrolytic enzymes are released out, then this jelly coat would be digested. And once the jelly coat is digested, then the fusion of the haploid nucleus within the sperm cells becomes easier with that of the haploid nucleus that we have got within the egg cell. Moving onward, if I were to talk about this part that we have in the sperm cell, so this goes with the name of midpiece or the body of the sperm cell. Within the female reproductive tract, the sperm cells, they need to move, they need to swim. And for the movement, there has to be the availability of the energy for it. So in the midpiece, since we have got abundant mitochondria, so these abundant mitochondria, they would release energy from the respiration, and that energy would be utilized by the sperm cell to move within the female reproductive tract. If I were to come toward the last part of the sperm cell that we have here, so this is the tail with us, or this is the flagellum with us, because the sperm in the female reproductive tract, this need to float or this need to swim in the forward direction. So for that purpose, this tail that we have within the sperm cell, this has a flagellating movement, like this kind of a movement is the flagellating movement. And when this would happen, so it would push the sperm in the forward direction so that it can reach toward the egg, fuse with it, and bring about the fertilization process. Moving onward to be discussing the female gamete that we have with us. So the name of the female gamete is the egg cell. And these egg cells, they are produced within the ovaries. The role of the egg cell is very simple, that this would bring the genetic information from the female parent, or it would bring one set of the chromosome from the female parent. If I were to take you to be understanding the structure of the egg cell and how this would be adapted to the function, so if you were to focus here, this part that I have within the egg cell, so this is its cell membrane. On the outside of the cell membrane, what we have here that I'm indicating with the greenish pointer, so this is the jelly coat. If we will come here, so here we have got the nucleus, and that nucleus is the haploid nucleus. Other than that, this part of the egg cell is the cytoplasm, and in the cytoplasm, we have got the yolk in it. So irrespective of the cell membrane and the cytoplasm, the major points that we need to look on the egg cell is the haploid nucleus, that it carries the information from the female parent. If I were to talk about the jelly coat, so this would allow only one sperm cell to fuse. Because a human can only exist if there is 46 number of chromosomes, so it is important that this egg cell should allow only one sperm cell to fuse it with it, not more than that. Because if more than one sperm cell would fuse with the egg cell, so we would not be able to retain the 46 number of chromosomes, and the number of chromosomes, if this changes, so this can have very negative impacts on the development and the growth of the fetus or the baby that we were planning. So what we say is that this jelly coat, since it allows one sperm cell to fuse, so after one sperm cell has fused with it, so this jelly coat hardens, and due to the hardening of the jelly coat, more than one sperm cell cannot fuse with it. If I were to talk about the cytoplasm having the yolk in it, so this would have the nutrients in it. Before, because What we know is that at this point in the female reproductive tract, we have the ovaries, and then we have got these funnel-like shape structure, and they are the oviducts with us, and then here we have got the uterus. So after we have made the zygote, so this would convert into the ball of the cell, and that ball of cell is the embryo. An embryo later get itself implanted into the uterus, and afterward it would obtain the nutrients from the female body. But before the implantation, since the cell divisions are happening, and for cell divisions, we need the energy. So thanks partly to the presence of the nutrient that we have got within the yolk of the egg cell, that the energy would be available and that would allow for these cell divisions before the implantation can be brought about by. If I were to move further and to be comparing the male and the female gametes, so the first major difference that we have in between them, so this is in terms of the size. The sperm cells compared to the egg cell, they are very small, like they are 45 micrometer. If I were to talk about the egg cells, so compared to them, they are large, and if you see that they have 0.15 millimeter length of them. If we were to talk about the structure, so the sperm cell has the head area. It also has a flagellum, and it has many structural adaptations like the presence of the acrosome that we don't see within the egg cell. Egg cell, on the other way around, we see is that they are round shaped cells, and compared to the sperm cells, they have the few different adaptations, or they have got some different structures in them, and among them we have this presence of the jelly coat in the egg cell that we don't see with the sperm cell. If I were to talk about the motility or the movement, so what we know is that the sperm cells, since they have the tail or the flagellum in them, so they're able to move, they're able to be having the locomotion, but the egg cell, they do not have any of the locomotion in them, thanks partly to the presence of the cilias that we have in the oviduct that basically moves the egg cells within the oviduct so that they can cause it to come in contact with the sperm cell for the fertilization process. If we were to talk about the numbers, so the sperm cells, they are produced in millions per day in the testes of the male individual, and an estimate is that their number is around 100 million per day. If we were to talk about the egg cells, so each of the female individual, they would be born with having many immature eggs within their ovaries, but once in a month in their menstrual cycle, only one egg cell would be released. So I hope that this concept of the gametes that we have in the male and the female reproductive tract, it would make sense to all of you.